Our next speaker, and we're going to evolve into the evening, and we've had a couple schedule changes, as you've expected. Spencer Wilcox. He was in D.C. He works for Exelon Power Company, and we just heard word, oops, can't, and I'm not going to press whys and wherefores from him, but power companies do what they do. So we're just changing things a little bit. And from L3 Communications, Travis Hartman was not formally on the schedule, but we evolved him in because it's something that is just so cool, and I really like the concept of data exfiltration. So we moved him from this morning, from when the Swedes were doing their thing. So we took some time, and now it's all working out. So Travis understands this stuff like really, really well. I've heard about you.
Excellent.
I've researched you.
Okay.
I talked to your teachers from grade school. I know all about you.
And
so,
you still let me in your house.
Yeah, but you don't have a beer, and if you're going to do a demo, you need a beer. Yeah. And
well,
over to Travis.
Wine, so.
Oh, wine. Thank you. Thank you, Travis.
Yes. Before the evening devolves a little bit more. So, I do want to say thank you to Pete Portman. He's not here. He is a person that, as I came up with the theory and built out how everything needs to work, and he said, okay, I got it, I'm going to go play with some Legos for a while, and he built the contraption that you'll be seeing in just a little while. So one of the interesting challenges Wynn has talked about is how people were signed up for InfoWarCon, and then things have happened, and they were told, no, you're not allowed to go talk about different things.
Oh.
Yeah. So. It's going to be a little kludgy here on paging through some stuff. All right. Yeah. I actually had to go through and get an ITAR clearance on my slides, my presentation, so that I'm allowed to talk about anything. They're like, okay, so if you want to be able to talk about taking data out of virtual desktop infrastructures, you can do that, as long as you don't use any special code, you don't do anything that's illegal, and it's only something that some commonly average people might be able to do. I'm like, okay, so that's
so it's built into the screen already, then.
Yes. So, and I will also say that as part of this process, I managed to expense a drinking bird. So, $15 billion company, and I expensed a drinking bird. Beyond anything else, I think that's a pretty good accomplishment. So, what I wanted to do is I was going through the scenario, and I got like, what's this common individual? I'm going to be getting some audience interaction and feedback with this. Most of you watch James Bond movies growing up, Dr. No, whatever else, various spy movies in the 60s and 70s, and of course, they have to get in the building, or they slip away from the dinner party, and they open up the file cabinet, and they've got the camera, and they're taking pictures so they can get the document out of it. So anyway, the theory is James Bond, I really think he was a script kiddie. We'll get your vote at the end. Some of the background, of course, high alcohol tolerance. Well, okay, that generally fits with the computer security community. I've made the phrase a few times that top hackers, like top dragsters, work best when they're alcohol fueled. But you also notice James Bond, and where's Wynn hiding? Okay. But he had the follow-on career of annoying the host of Hacker Jeopardy, Curse You Trebek, but he was an extrovert, and of course he was getting all his technology from Q, so not much for the hacker. But the guy always has a solution to every problem. Whatever you throw at him, he's going to take some common items, and he's going to put stuff out there, and he's going to make everything work. And like the picture of Wynn up there on the shelf, he was also rocking a mullet.
Oh, he was so hot.
What?
Sorry, what's this got to do with remote sensing?
You don't have a drink in your hand. I'm not allowed to ask questions. So, this is the scenario that we have now. So went in an acquaintance's house one day. Somebody mentions they've seen this document at their office, and it proves aliens exist. And they're like, how can I get this document and share with the world that aliens exist? Trying to get this scenario approved post-Snowden was horrible. But the employer, they've got a VDI. They've got like Citrix, something like that, where they're able to go in and interact with documents. But they're following industry best practices. It says you shall not print locally. You cannot save the document locally. So how can we get this document out of that corporate protected sandbox so we can prove that the aliens exist to the rest of the world? And we're all hanging around. We've been watching the game. It's a bunch of guys or gals, whoever are playing. They got the common stuff that you might find with a gamer laying around the house. They've got their Xbox 360. They've got whatever else going on. So, what are some of the items? Keyboards. Everybody's got a keyboard with their computer. Some of the nice ones are a little bit programmable. You can actually go ahead and hit one button. It'll record a series of keystrokes. That becomes useful later on in the presentation. Game pads. I actually have one of those over here. I'll pass it around. Sort of like specialized keyboards. So if you're playing a game, whatever else, you can have a bunch of macros or functions assigned to keys, so it'll do different things, including mouse clicks, different movements, a wide number of combinations. You can have them set to where they'll just keep repeating, or it'll only happen one time. Now, what's nice on this one in particular, there were a lot of reviews on Amazon from graphics artists saying, when I have to do a bunch of palette selections rather than click through 10 menu buttons, hit one button and everything switches. So definitely a legitimate business reason for why I expensed it.
Is it Alienware?
It's not. That one is Logitech. The other big brand right now is Razer. They bought the Nostromo series that was previously belonged to Belkin. We're looking at this. Maybe we got a video capture card. I saw a lot of great reviews for these $100 video capture cards where people were recording part of their gameplay from their Xbox. So, they're like, hey, that was great, and I've got a video of 10 minutes of me teabagging my friend because he's not that great in a first-person shooter. I don't know if that meets the FUD packing from earlier, but
When you do realise that word will sum this conference up.
Oh, let's see that in the marketing materials.
FUD
packing and teabagging. Info work on 24.
You're live right now.
FUD packers.
All right. Well.
End of a brilliant career.
Yeah.
You've always wanted to work in Leavenworth. We'll get it.
Excellent.
Who's going next Leavenworth tonight?
So, we did have a test environment for this. We looked at a lot of the different cloud vendors or VDI type vendors, Citrix, as an example. They have websites you can go to and you can set up a demo account. So we used those for a demo account. There wasn't any particular corporate or government or any production infrastructure used or violated during the preparation for this presentation.
No aliens.
Really, we said, okay, this is going to be a 4-step process. We need to acquire or copy those images, get the screenshots or videos, 60s spy movie stuff. We want to put them all into one document. I don't have 3 guys sitting in the back room that are going to go through each individual document and say, oh, yes, this is the one that has the diagram of the alien landing site. Process it through OCR. Why? Because I'm lazy and I'm not going to go through a 300-page document looking for the alien reference. Looking for that desired information. Okay, well, we got OCR, I can do my search. And ultimately, if we're doing this well, we're not going to be showing up on a bunch of forensics or other investigations. Somebody's not going to show up. Who are the people hanging out with the FBI recently or from the FBI?
They haven't had the courage to come back yet.
Okay,
Oh.
they were here yesterday, and I'm sure they will be here shortly. So, you're looking at this, how are we going to obtain the images? Well, there's still image acquisition. If you've got an iPad or an Android phone, whatever else, and most of you are familiar that there's a couple of buttons you can press at the same time. You take a screenshot. Okay, great. We looked at, are there some different applications out there? There are a few applications that will automatically take a screenshot when certain conditions exist. To me, I thought it would be really nice if I had an application running that I could say, take a screenshot once every 30 seconds, and then all I have to do is automate the scrolling through my document, and I can then have a series of images, everything in the document. Another thing we discussed was how can we maybe do a video. So if I've got one screen or I'm not able to take screenshots, if I have an HDMI output, I could run that into that capture card, record a video of scrolling through that document, and then I'll have to extract, let's say, one frame every 15 seconds that correlates to one page. And that'll get stitched together. So we looked at the on-device capture, the remote capture. Remote capture, we're looking at how can I do that? Well, the nice thing, if in case of this, where we have right now just one tablet, but if I had two tablets together, I could have the top one going with FaceTime on Apple, somebody at a remote end receiving it on their Mac, outputting that to a video card or video capture card, so the video is being recorded elsewhere. By that time, I've crossed multiple states, multiple jurisdictions, and even though I know there's maybe this device on top that's talking FaceTime to something else, and I get all the warrants through Apple, I still don't know that that had an external video feed. So very nice from the avoiding some of the forensic capture on it. So with that, I'll go ahead and show one of the things that we came up with, which was doing the Legos. And whenever we break later, I'll give everybody a chance to come up, take a look at it, and poke at it, prod it. The camera on this is probably like an 8-year-old Kodak camera, so it's pretty poor quality, nothing big on it. And what this does when it runs, it's going to do two different things. One is going to take a picture of it, and then it's going to use the robotic arm to advance to the next page. Take a picture, advance to the next page, and when it gets done, on the folder on the SD card, I now have pictures in every page on that document. So everything that 60s spy person was doing, we don't have to leave the party. We're still drinking wine and whatever other beverages. This is doing the work for us. Isn't it great what modern technology can provide?
It's probably doing it as the party piece, so you don't even have to hide your activity.
Yes.
Hide it in the file cabinet.
And one of the things that we did with this as well, we were looking at it and said, you know, this fits the toys somebody might have laying around. This is just Lego Mindstorms. There's nothing high-tech. It's just using their little interface for the coding and the robotic arms. One thing you may notice is there's an extra wire here. This wire is actually a ground wire because there has to be the capacitance for the finger that's touching the screen. Where we got the finger or the little rubber ball thing, just went to any conference where there's vendors doing their handouts, and we walked up to a booth and said, hey, can we have that? And they're sure. And so once again, it's just a vendor tchotchke. It wasn't anything we had to pay for, and it was just available.
So it's their fault.
Absolutely. And I'm having a little problem with the grounding on it right now. I do have a video win that shows kind of from the top down with the page turning and everything.
Oh, wow.
I'll get that to you so you can incorporate with the other information. You see this arm turns, that does take a picture, and the other arm goes, advances the page. It'll continue doing that throughout the document. We could actually have it going quite a bit faster, but we have it go pretty slowly just for the demo purposes.
I think there's an app for that.
Yes.
So if we had Apple TV, we could watch
Scrape
it
the screen and.
Yeah.
Yes. All right.
It's like having a 3D printer, isn't it?
A little bit. So some of the things that we ran into as we're doing some of the testing, like using that gamepad, the Windows and Mac key sequences. In Windows, real easy, you do alt print screen and you're taking a picture of that current window that you're looking at. With Mac, if you're wanting to take a picture of a specific window, there was actually having to click on that window after the key sequence. So that made it a little bit more complicated. Also, for doing screen captures, whether it's from VDI or using the camera like that, the screen resolution actually had an impact. So if you're running a giant image full screen and you're doing the screenshots off that, later when you go to merge them into the document, you may have trouble with the borders, things overlapping, and run into some OCR challenges on that. We did run into some applications, depending on what you're actually doing, that they will block different functionality. They'll try and either block the ability to take a picture or a screenshot, or they will impair other functionality. Like, I think it was Citrix on their demo website. There were certain things, if we tried to do it and we're using the HDMI video out, it would just block the video signal. And suddenly we just have a black box going there.
So it could, in fact, as you said, be any app, and if they charge for premium, you can just put it in your, what do you call this?
The Legos. We'll just call it the Legos. All right. The Lego Tower of Doom. Right? But anyway, so
The scanner.
yes.
What a better
Yeah,
thing.
somebody mentioned earlier, I think, actually when you provided the tablet, you said, well, here, let's look at iBooks, because you can't copy them out or whatever very easily, and so they give you that functionality. All right. Some of the other things when we're looking at the external picture video capture, what we could do for the pictures. A lot of you may have seen this when the iPad first came out. How do you print off an iPad? You just put it down in the copier. This was actually at a forensics conference, and it was a camera setup, much nicer camera, tray and everything else, but it didn't have the robotic arm, so that was an enhancement we made. We also looked at, what if I just take a nice camera and put it there on a tripod, and I'm getting great pictures and everything. The problem with that for most people is their coworkers are going to notice it, especially if they're doing it at the office and say, what are you doing? In my case, my coworkers saw it and they kind of closed my door and walked away. We don't want to know what you're doing. All right. So I already talked about some of the things in terms of being lazy, the repeating key sequences. One of the things when we were looking at the tablet, or we're looking at the drinking bird. Does anybody remember the movie Darkman?
Yes.
Okay. And the drinking bird in that, there was somebody was tied to a chair and there was a bomb, and to build suspense, they had a drinking bird, and it kept getting closer and closer to pressing the button, and eventually it pressed the button. The problem with using a drinking bird, other than you may not be able to expense off the $7 depending on your employer, is they rely on a temperature differential. So there's only evaporation of the head, of the material that's on the head, it dips itself in water, and that's how it keeps it going. The other thing you can do is you can actually apply heat to the other end of the bird. And as we were doing the experimentation for how we would set things up, the exhaust fan on the computer was blowing out enough of a warm plume that if we set the bird near it, it would perpetually be powered by the exhaust fan on the computer. So that was nice.
Exhaust up its ass.
Pretty much, yes.
Fantastic.
Back to your FUD packing. Yes. Okay.
So we got a T-shirt with a dipping bird with a thud pecker
Yes.
flying out of a Mac.
It's like a crest with a T.
Isn't it handy that your other half's an artist?
So, so at this point in our evening, we've now got this SD card. We've got this sequence of images of all the different pages. We had like, how are we going to go combine this? We tried several different ways, looking for what was going to be the easiest or the laziest way to do it. Try doing PowerPoint. Can I just create a new slide, paste an image in there? And it really didn't work well. We're having problems with the margins and stuff like that. We ended up using Microsoft Word. We had better luck doing it in Windows than we did in Mac. So what we'd do is we'd start up, Explorer, highlight the first picture, it would copy it, tab over to Word, paste it in, hit enter, and switch back over, go to the next image, and we just continue to repeat that. Later on
any Mac, or is that because of screen resolution / fonts, or what?
The challenge we ran into in the Mac was when we tab back over to the window that had all the images, we were having some issues with how it would like reach the end of a row of images or a certain place in a column of images, and how the cursor would go ahead and advance. And so in some cases we were able to overcome that by changing the view from maybe doing thumbnails to now I'm just doing a long list of that. Or we tried, sometimes we had to change the shape of the preview window. So if my Explorer window was like this and I had 3 columns, if I changed it to I only had 1 column, then it would be able to keep moving over to the right. So that was a challenge we ran into, able to get through that. But what was the easiest and smoothest way of getting it done was actually using Word and in Windows.
See, there's genuine use for the blind, isn't there? I mean, I don't believe that you have problems for the blind for this sort of application in terms of digital licensing. It'd be interesting to make something like this for the visually impaired.
That's an interesting thought. I hadn't considered that one. Of course, the nice thing, once you have the OCR, you can have it read to you, essentially, at that point.
Well, I mean, if it had all the other restrictions on it, you might still be able to have it read it, you know, out loud, and then you could
Take the voice and those.
Run dragging naturally speaking and
then
record
voice
it.
recognition.
yeah, or have mechanical transcribe it for you, right?
Yeah.
In fact, you could probably do it over the telephone to India cheaper.
Is this all going to go up on the bad ideas page?
So
Some of these are really good bad ideas.
I don't like this. I'm getting set for the next conference now. I got to get dragging naturally speaking.
Well, you do it on the
Contract
cloud
somebody in India.
as a service to India, and you actually get it provisioned live and get it running during your presentation, and then you email the results back to everyone.
Excellent, excellent. And probably the best way to do that is talk to two different companies and say whichever one has the better transcription results from this trial will be the one that we go with for the long-term contract.
Yeah, it's like a transcription bounty.
Yeah.
And then we could get it translated into Chinese and give it back to them.
Yes. So.
That'll throw them, won't it?
And then we'll give them copies of our doctrine, and nobody will know what's going on at all.
Well, once they've got the concept of FUD, they're
Yes.
truly screwed.
Funnification.
Funnification of the Chinese.
One of the things that we ran into is we're starting to stitch things together. It's like, well, we have to do the OCR, and we had that restriction. What stuff people commonly have around, where I can, grab for free that I'm not going to go out and spend the money. ScanStore is one website. They have a bunch of comparisons of different OCR software. A lot of times they had free trials, but the free trials tend to have limits. It was either on page count or the number of images or some other restriction. And there were some online versions where you'd let you upload an image, and it would transcribe it, but it would only do one image at a time. And that failed because it's slow, and I'm lazy. I don't want to. I've got Legos to do my work for me. I've got a gamepad somewhere else or a drinking bird.
It's got to be the drinking bird.
That's probably not the best thing I need for my annual review with my company, saying I've got a drinking bird to do my work. But anyway.
Who was the guy that outsourced all his work?
I think was it a guy from Verizon?
Yeah.
I thought he had like 3 different employers. And Verizon was one. He'd even shipped his RSA key fob. I think it was to India.
Yeah.
And he basically outsourced his job with each of the companies. I think it was Verizon and a defense contractor, the one that caught him. And then there were a couple other things, but he'd go get a job for $100,000, and he would pay somebody $20,000 in India to do the work.
Well, it was China.
It was China?
China,
It was
yeah.
China.
Okay.
And the guy
And
went
the
into
quality
work
was really
every
good.
day. No,
He had the best
he did.
reviews.
But he had to go into work and serve cat videos all day. I know who the guy was.
You
Okay.
don't.
Yeah, he'd go into work. I mean, you got to have a job where you work at home where you do that so you can.
So he'd have been all right if he had a bird in the office.
Drinking bird.
Yes, if you had a drinking bird. How come you're so very efficient? Well,
It's that drinking bird.
and ultimately, what we ended up doing for most of the OCR is actually Acrobat Pro. It does OCR. You can get the trial version. It's good for 30 days. I'm sure many people have extended trial versions.
Does it install Flash? Your machine's pre-Trojan, so you can get your remote Chinese workers on.
It depends on where you download it. Yeah. And I've got it on the virtual machine on my other system, so later on, as people get to play with that, I can show both the gamepad, how it goes through and it pieces the documents together from the different images, as well as show you how the OCR actually does work, and we're able to find the UFO terms there in the document. Some of the things that we ran into, I talked about HDMI and some of the restrictions with that. Sometimes they're using the copy protect bit on the HDMI. Occasionally, you're able to actually use the converter that converts HDMI into component to get rid of that copy protection bit. It doesn't always guarantee it's going to work. There's a software application called Fraps. It's about $37. That will let you record whatever is happening on your screen. The downside to that is it makes huge files. So it's okay if you're recording like a minute or two of whatever game you're playing, but if you're going to record 3 hours of scrolling through a document, you're massive files, and that's a real problem. And we're concerned about what's happening with server-side monitoring, because it's a remote desktop. I'm viewing and interacting with something back in that corporate environment. So whatever I'm interacting with, they can see, if they have their stuff configured correctly, what I'm actually doing, or at least what I'm trying to do. So what's the stuff that typically we get left behind? What type of documents were we viewing? What was I accessing? Was I accessing the corporate strategic plan for the next 5 years? Was trying to find the FOUO translation of a Chinese warfare theoretical document? They can also look at, depending on how they have things implemented, they may be able to look at how regular you're going through a document. Most people, they're reading through a document, they maybe hit the table of contents, and they'll scroll through the boring stuff. Military doctrine, they'll scroll through all the boring stuff, and they go, great, I've read it, and they're done with the whole thing in about 3 minutes. But it's not a steady page rate that people go through most documents. Sometimes they spend a little more time reading a graphic, or less time because the whole page was a picture. But it shouldn't be constant, the way they go through a document. The hours that people are doing stuff. If you're a manager, your employees are doing their work and they're there 8-10 hours a day, they're probably not going home for another 12 hours and going back through other documents again, especially documents that aren't in their normal work area. That should be a pretty easy thing to flag. Talked about how we had some issues when we were looking at the display resolution. If I had the wrong resolution, I'm doing that image capture, it became a pain in the butt later on. If somebody normally is running their Windows maximized and suddenly they're changing it and some of those other indicators are happening, that's probably a pretty good chance that there's something hinky going on with that. On the device side, and this is what actually drove us to do the camera at first instead of actually having the device. Even if they weren't able to restrict taking a screenshot on the device, a lot of times that application had the ability to notice that a picture was taken. So it couldn't stop the user from taking a picture on every page, but it could be notifying the server saying, Travis was going through this corporate plan and every page he took a picture, or this is what.
Nothing's stopping you taking one back, so you know what's looking at the screen.
Cover it up with a little sticky note.
Yeah, but your policy might be. Yeah.
A little sticky note.
Yeah.
Worked nicely.
Well, I mean, that's a countermeasure. I demand the right to see you read the document.
And you need to have a little image of something that looks like the ceiling over the top of it.
Yeah, or you're shot dead.
Or a little series of...
Or we go back to the 60s spy movie where they have the picture of the room and they hang it up there, and so it's on the little wire thing and the camera rotates back and forth still looking at the same picture. I learned a lot from the 60s spy movies.
Men from Uncle.
Yes. And primarily the amount of alcohol that you need to consume to be a spy. The other thing, we really weren't sure on the telco records. I think that's probably more of a stretch. But that we're thinking, like, if I'm doing the stack things, I'm doing FaceTime, I'm doing the connection to somewhere else in a different jurisdiction. By the time they're having to go after telco records to figure out that somebody took their corporate business plan, probably so many other things have went wrong in that process. It's not that big of a concern, at least not for our 4 people that were playing video games in somebody's living room. I do like on the device logs, it goes back to what the legal requirements are and kind of the bring your own device. If your company or your employer is saying, you know what, you can bring your own device, you can bring your own iPad, you can connect in, you can do this functionality, take a look at that. See, are they actually saying that they have the right to check any logs on your device, or is it not included in there? If it's not included, they shouldn't be able to look and see you are taking screenshots, or that they're whether or not that policy has any clauses in there for them to do different monitoring of what's going on in your document. Okay. Just as a little reference, put this in there. We looked at the iOS and Android on some of the restrictions. Can they actually stop the screenshots? Can they report that they were happening? Looking at the SE Android, the secure Android, and the versions that's coming out with that, I thought, wow, if I was wanting to stop somebody from taking pictures using VDI, what I'd like to do is every time they take a screenshot while using that application, I'll insert a white screen or a black screen, and every picture they have is
So
there.
that third one, you said no for oils. It has got a camera. It could detect it.
But and detecting if the screenshot was taken, and since then there's been, this is iOS 6, so 7 may have it in there, but it was basically if somebody presses the buttons to take a screenshot, is there a log? And if there is a log, is that available to a different application? In this case, Citrix. The HDMI use, that was based on the device manufacturer. Some were enabling the restrictions, some were not. And
I can confirm it doesn't work on Apple TV, which is an HDMI lock from an iPad.
okay.
Bastards.
So I did mention Pete earlier. I did want to go once again acknowledge my Drinky Bird because it was key for being able to do any research with that.
He's still there.
Unfortunately, it didn't survive a trip, and so my Drinky Bird is multiple pieces in North Carolina somewhere.
But maybe it had more than 3 ounces of capacity, and TSA made you take it out of your bag.
Okay, I got a couple other slides. We just talked about some functionality. Right. So those are the ones that didn't go through as hidden slides. But ultimately, if we're looking at this, one question I forgot to ask earlier. So if you're talking to a bunch of gamers and there's one person they all know, does anybody know who that is?
Leroy Jenkins?
They know Leroy, or they at least know how to yell Leroy, but they all know your mom.
This is true.
All right, sorry about that. So with that, open it up to any specific questions you guys might have. If not, in a little bit, we'll let people play with stuff.
How did you know my mum is 84 on Friday and I've got a bunch of gamers going up there to have a party with her?
It's the royal mother that will. Which may mean
No, I'm not
something
going
different
down
to you,
this
though.
road. It's just too easy.
Different royal mother.
Yes.
If you know my mom, does that mean you're my dad?
So I know it's being recorded. I think the question was,
Why do you hate freedom?
then who's your daddy now? Okay.
Now, you could
Fuck
also-
Hacker says, who's your daddy now?
you could dramatically reduce the cost of some of these devices as well by going through the same outlets in China.
Oh,
You can buy unbranded hardware. I buy capture cards all the time. They're $20-30.
But give them to you for free if you send them a copy of everything and take a picture of.
Well, that's they'll send it. That's why it's free shipping, because once you hook it up, it's already sending captures of everything that you're putting through there.
Right, through Alibaba?
Alibaba or DX or there's 80. They all sell from the same factories. But
Yeah. And as we're looking at stuff that was completely commonly available, so what we did was we said we want stuff that's got good reviews from people that are playing video games, or there's actual reviews from people that are saying I'm using this in my office, and that we could order from Amazon. So that anything that we had, it was something.
so if you take the basic design and ask for copies of the Mindstorms robot kit as well, can you get that ordered from your Chinese clone factory? That'd be fun.
I don't know. Actually, that's a quick question, Jake.
sorry. Yes.
Is there something comparable to the Lego Mindstorms that you've seen on
Yeah,
the
unbranded,
Chinese stores?
unbranded Lego here.
Okay.
Yeah, not to mention the servos and everything you need to drive all that stuff.
So if we gave a part
Now,
this, we
granted,
could,
it's not as fancily packed in the box where you just go to a Fred Meyer's or wherever and just buy the Mindstorm set for $99. But yeah, you can piece it together.
Okay.
Your cost difference would probably just for the Lego stuff would be somewhere $20, $30 difference to piece it together.
well, hang on, we
Okay.
could market this as
Yeah,
the
and I'd say
fun
this
one.
has probably been it was a few $100
Okay.
kit with the Mindstorms.
It's the larger, yeah, the larger.
Yeah.
But if you took all the parts exactly as is, that would be a marketable thing for the next conference.
So you could have in the vendor area have your own kit,
Yeah,
or
and you have the demo as well.
or forensic image capture.
Yeah, and you can go home with one.
And some of you may remember a few years ago, they were having one of the DMCA
We're
discussions,
going to be selling these kits.
and the MPAA said, there was a question about how can school teachers provide video clips or sections, and the MPAA said, well, it's fair use if you take a camera and point at whatever's on the screen.
Hey!
So telesync is legal?
Yay!
According to the MPAA and the arguments Library of Congress has heard, this may be viable. Now,
I'm saying telesync in Pirate Bay.
Well, it's legal purely from the accessibility.
now, what you're allowed to actually use is that information, then it becomes really interesting because I'm looking at an image, I'm not looking at words, or I took an image and I didn't take words, and how does that actually apply? I'm not a lawyer, and EFS isn't here, so...
It's all right, we'll get the type up done in India.
Excellent, yes. You can have the person in India that doesn't have the employment history. Any other questions?
I think we're in time for close-ups. I think it's time to open the bar, think about dinner in an hour and change. We got a couple folks.